Does it surprise you to see this response from politicians so soon following the shooting?
Well, it's absolutely disgusting, quite frankly. I mean, their push for gun control, they are fundraising. They are sending out fundraising letters, raising money off dead children to advance their cause. And it's despicable. I mean, for one thing, they only care about certain deaths, right? More than 40 people have been shot and killed in Chicago this month, but they're not raising money on that because Chicago has very strict gun control. All the gun control proposals that they're putting out, Chicago has adopted them. So it doesn't serve their cause to raise money on what's going on in Chicago. Look, a killer can use any instrument to incur a mass killing, a car like what was used in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where many people were killed, or a truck like what was used in France, where 86 people were run over and murdered. But blaming the instrument is short-sighted because no law that bans a certain object is going to stop an evil, determined heart from killing. I'll say one more thing about the left. The left is calling for gun control, and yet it's gun control that has contributed to this mass shooting that we saw in Texas. 81% of police agree that teachers and staff should be armed. And with good reason, because no school in this country has ever had a mass shooting where there were armed teachers and staff. But tragically, that was not the case at this Texas school. Police were reportedly not quick to rush in, and this school did not take part in the program that allows teachers to be armed. So it was a gun-free zone. And that's what killers often choose to target. 94% of mass shootings occur in places where guns are banned. Let that sink in. Killers choose gun-free zones 94% of the time. Why? Because they don't want bullets being fired back at them. That's why they don't target police stations or gun shows, because killers love gun control. And that's what enabled this killer in Texas.
And you know, Eric, parents are waking up and they're trying to prevent something like this from happening at the school their own children attend. And they want to have these smart conversations where you do talk this through. We hear from the president, though, the first response is the Second Amendment is not absolute. What's your reaction to how the president of the United States is approaching his solution to this nationwide problem?
Well, the president either hasn't read the Second Amendment or he's forgotten what it says in his old age. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's absolutely absolute. He says that, he rambled on about how guns, there's always been limitations. That's totally contrary to what the Second Amendment says. It specifically says it shall not be infringed. So for law-abiding persons, there shall not be infringements. The problem is that the anti-gun left for the past 2 years has been throwing criminals back out on the streets. And so they're trying to blame shift the Second Amendment and gun owners rather than looking inward and realizing that they're the fault. You know, it's really amazing. It's not too long ago, the left was praising the Ukraine for issuing automatic weapons to their civilians. How quickly they forget why someone would not only want automatic weapons, but the semi-automatic version, the AR-15s, which are excellent self-defense weapons. Stephen Williford, who works with us at Gun Owners of America, stopped a shooter in a Texas church using his AR-15. They are fantastic for self-defense, and that's why Americans would want to have them.
And I hear what you're saying about how, it's a criminal who chooses to fire these weapons or a criminal who chooses to mow down a crowd of Christmas parade goers. But when you dive into the access to these weapons, in this case, it was an 18-year-old, someone who might not have been flagged for mental health. Again, we just saw these social media posts right before the shooting took place. When it comes to access to these style of weaponry and maybe the rounds of ammunition he was able to purchase, is there any sort of limitation you could envision? I know it's the case-by-case sort of instance where we're talking about here, but would you be willing to entertain that conversation?
You will never stop evil, determined people from getting their hands on dangerous instruments, whether they are cars, whether they are trucks, whether they are box cutters, which were used to kill 3,000 people by hijacking planes on 9/11. You won't stop that. So what is important, I think what gets lost in all this is, first of all, is how gun control stops good people from protecting children. 30% of schools in Texas have the Guardian or Marshal program where teachers can be armed. That was not in place in this school. It should be. Again, there's no school in this country that has had a mass shooting if there were armed teachers or staff present at that school. The other thing I think that gets lost is while each one of these deaths is tragic, we need to remember that guns are being used, and we're not talking about it, but guns are being used 16 to 100 times more often to save life. And that's according to Obama's Center for Disease Control. Guns are used far more often in this country to save life than to take life. So, it's just like with a car, they provide it, or a truck, great help, but they can also be used for evil.
We've seen gun violence, too, in cities and states where they have extremely strict gun laws. Erich Pratt, thank you so much for coming on this morning. We do appreciate the conversation.
Thank you very much.